Welcome to another edition of Office Hours with State Representative John Hampton. I'm John Hampton and delighted that you could join me today. My guest today is a noble steward of Connecticut's farmland. He's a former state legislator. He's a friend. He's got a vision for our state's farmland, bold, and he's been hard at work for many years now, and I'm delighted to have him as my guest, Commissioner of Agriculture, Brian Hurlburt. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Representative Hampton. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining me today. And gosh, we go way back. I know some of your background, but I thought it would be helpful for folks at home to learn a little more about you and where you came from and how you got here today.
That's happy to, and thank you again for the opportunity to share with your community a little bit about Connecticut's agriculture, our history, and our future. I'll just start off with my baseline talking point. Agriculture in Connecticut is a $4 billion industry made up of 5,500 small farms across the state, working 370,000 acres of land. And in Simsbury, you think about the flat open land, but we also take care of Long Island Sound, and we have responsibilities for aquaculture and our clam and oyster operations down there. Another agricultural heritage that goes back many, many generations in Connecticut. So I actually started at the state capitol as an aide to then House Majority Leader David Pudlin. Over the years, had a couple of different spots there, and like you, working from the Capitol, was able to run for local office and served on my town council for a couple of years. And then my House seat opened up back in 2006, and I ran and was elected to state representative for the 53rd District. Actually, with Linda Schofield was in my class, a great partner and friend and seatmate. I'm not sure why they thought it would be a good idea for the two of us to sit together, but it was made for good conversations. What really, I didn't grow up on a farm. I don't have an agricultural background per se. But like you, when you're out knocking doors in your district, it's not just an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to your constituents or future constituents and voters. It's an opportunity to listen and learn and see what's going on. And the district back then was 3 towns, Ashford, Tolland, and Willington. And getting out into Willington and Ashford was a very different communities than the one I grew up in Tolland. But in Tolland, we were the fastest growing town in the state for a number of years. Willington and Ashford had still a pretty robust agricultural economy. And my feeling was, if I'm going to be state representative for this district, I need to do something that protects these jobs, that protects this heritage, that protects those working lands. One, because knowing from Tolland growing up, it could turn into sprawl and suburbia really quickly if you're not proactive. And two, those are family jobs. Those are small businesses. Those are people who are contributing to their community and to the economy. And so it's really important that we pay attention to them. And so I focused on agricultural policy. At the time, as well, one of my constituents was named the Farm Bureau's executive director. And so it just made sense that we had this kind of rhythm about agricultural policy and what we could do here in the state capitol to support Connecticut's farmers. And, a lot of learning, a lot of listening. And over the next 15 years, really, I've had a number of different roles, being at the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, Farm Service Agency, where I was the executive director for Connecticut, the executive director of the Connecticut Farm Bureau. And also I served as the VP at Wholesome Wave, which is a food security nonprofit based out of Bridgeport, connecting agricultural policy with food security and public health policy. So it's kind of a neat path to get where I am here today. But it's been really interesting for me, and I'm very fortunate that I've had these amazing opportunities and an opportunity to continue to serve in public service.
Now, was it a hard decision for you to leave the legislature?
It wasn't as hard as I thought it probably would have been. It was an opportunity to join a presidential administration. Doesn't come around too often. And the other competing piece, so that's, the public service professional opportunity, the competing piece was my wife and I just had our first child. And so, as you know, the role of a state representative is a part-time responsibility. I used to say it's a full-time job and part-time pay. But so having another job, having a young family, there was a lot of pressure for me as an individual, and I had 3 towns as mentioned, so that means there was 3 of every event that you had to go to, 3 town committees, 3 board of ed issues, 3 sets of all of those things. And so it was just really amazing opportunity at a really unique time in my life. And so I don't regret it. I'm happy that now, as in this role at the department, I get to come back to the Capitol every now and again and see folks like you, old friends, and hang out and catch up. But I'm not living that life of, what meeting am I going to this evening and where do I have to be at 8 o'clock on Saturday? That's there's some of those, but not nearly what it was like before. And the opportunity to focus on a policy area, you've got to know a little bit of policy about everything as a state representative, with very little staff and support, by the way. I think people don't remember that, a lot of that burden and responsibility falls on your shoulders to do the homework, return the phone calls, the emails, dig into the research that needs to be done. Going to the Department of Agriculture, you had staff, you had the ability to have a single issue. And that was refreshing and rewarding because you could actually get into the weeds on what was happening and why it was happening and really problem solve. And being a public servant still allowed me to have that opportunity to give back to the community and to participate in the larger discussion. So, and it's, so far, I think, knock on wood, I think it's worked out all right. And, those years of service, at the state legislature are some remarkable years. And I'm really thankful that I had the confidence of the voters to do that for 4 terms.
And you reminded me that we both started as staff members back in the old days, and no greater training ground is there than being a staff member here. And
I just read an article in Politico last week or 2 weeks ago about how staff members are the best legislators because they know the building, they know the process, they know the people, they know how to work an issue.
And you don't mind doing the grunt work.
And you're already trained to do the work.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when were you appointed and by whom?
2013 by President Obama. Okay. It's a presidential appointment at the recommendation of your congressional delegation.
Okay. And then when were you appointed Commissioner of Ag?
So I served at USDA until January 20th, 2017, which was the changeover from the Obama administration to the Trump administration. Okay. And that's when I was at Wholesome Wave and then the Farm Bureau. And then Governor Lamont appointed me in April of 2019.
Okay. So you're coterminous with the governor?
Yes, coterminous with the governor. And at this point, I've been a COVID commissioner longer than a non-COVID commissioner, which is, when you think about how the pandemic kind of shapes the reality of what you do and what you want to do, it's been a very different experience than I thought, I was walking into.
Has Connecticut always had a agricultural commission?
Yes, I think I'm the 21st. We're one of the oldest state departments of agriculture in the nation. Going back before the turn of the 19th century, 20th century rather.
So give us a status report on Connecticut farmland.
So COVID has been really interesting for Connecticut's agricultural industry. For the aquaculture industry, most people eat their oysters and their clams raw on the half. And so our industry was really geared towards the wholesale market, which services restaurants and hotels and other food service type industries. When COVID happened, that all shut down, right? I mean, there's, you're not going to a convention center, you're not going out traveling, business travel, going out for business dinners or, anything like that. And so all of that hospitality and food service shut down. And so I always say in my remarks that, in agriculture, you have to be innovators and entrepreneurs, because you can't do what you did yesterday, 10 years ago, 100 years ago, and expect the same result. The market just changes too much. And what we saw during COVID is exactly that. In a number of places in aquaculture, they pivoted. And they started, these farms started doing direct to consumer sales. And so we helped them with that, because that was I call it risk management. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're getting into, but they do know they've got to do something. And so we want to make sure that they are doing as much as they possibly can and comfortably, so they can focus on their business. That was one of the biggest challenges of COVID was these folks still had a business to run, and now they're doing it in a very different environment. And it's not like, they sat down and wrote a business plan and said, okay, in 5 years, here's what I want to be. It was like, in 5 weeks, I need to be doing this. And one of the great ideas that came from one of the employees at the Bureau of Aquaculture was, if you're buying Connecticut craft beer, you're probably interested in like local Connecticut things. So what happens if we connected our craft breweries with our shellfisher men and women? With the thought that, maybe, if it's there, you might buy a bag or spend $20 on clams or oysters. And so we worked with the Connecticut Craft Brewers Guild. And we had a couple of brewers who took us up on it. And we had a couple of shellfish operations that went in on it. And it was a huge success. And it was. People who, wanted to support their local brewery were also like, hey, I'll support a local fish farm, or aquaculture operation. And so they would buy, a bag of clams or oysters. They probably had no intention when they drove there for that. So it was a good match, but also, we were able to play the introductory role. We were able to work with the farm and let them know, like, hey, you're going to need to, demonstrate your license for the Department of Public Health. You should give them a call, let them know that you're going to be there, and work through all that process to make it easy for them to do this and be successful. And I think that's just a really good and clear example of how the agency approached the pandemic. How can we help? We're all out of our comfort zones. But we all have a little bit more knowledge than some of the other folks. So can we get together? Can we put our brains together and figure out how to navigate these new territories? We kept farmers markets and farm stands essential. That was part of the governor's initial executive order, recognizing that farmers need an outlet to sell. They also need their employees to be able to come to work. You can't, you can't have a greenhouse full of, a couple $100,000 worth of nursery products and walk away for 6 weeks, and come back. It needed that day-to-day attention. And people who didn't feel comfortable shopping in a grocery store, a farmer's market or a farm stand is a great alternative for them. And so we actually did see, an increase of between 30 and 40% in those direct sales during the course of the pandemic. And so it was really great to see that these communities that farmers have supported for many generations and hundreds of years turn back to the farm and appreciate their business and support them. And I think, that's a great story. And I think it was really a boost of confidence for a lot of farms who weren't sure what they were going to do to get through the pandemic.
What percentage of our land is farmland?
It's a very small percentage. We've got about 370,000 acres in production.
How many farms is that?
We've got about 5,500 farms in the state. So the average farm is just under 70 acres. But what's neat and different about Connecticut, that a lot of people don't think of when they think about, farms, they tend to think of the Midwest, corn, soy, thousands of acres, straight lines, and out there you need a farm that size to make a living. In Connecticut, if you have 5 acres and you're growing some neat products, you can be at a couple farmers markets, have a farm stand, and have a pretty, healthy revenue from that. Connecticut consumers want that local product. We have a lot of areas across the state that are higher income that can afford to pay a premium price for really fresh local goods. And there's a lot of diversity. So you can have, a vegetable, operation. You can have a cut flower operation. You can do, a couple of other different things that put it all together. And it's a really great business that you can have on a small acre. I think there's one farm out in northeastern Connecticut. It's like 2 acres.
Is that right?
But it provides for them. And so we need to think about, and I spend my time thinking about this, that's still a business. That's still their profession, and that's their career. And so they deserve as much support as a farm that, is working 3,000 acres. Because it's the same thought process, and our role is the same for both of them.
No, I know you're a big friend of Simsbury's, and you've been out to Simsbury, and we're proud of our multi-generational farms. You got Tuller's and Flammick Farm, and we're very conscious of the treasures that we have in our farmland, and thank you for your efforts in helping us.
Well, what's great about Tull Meadow, Fleming, you can be in Hartford and be in rural Connecticut in 20 minutes.
Exactly.
And not a lot of places have that kind of unique ability. Or you can be like me in Tolland and get to the northwest corner to do a farm visit and get back home the same day. And so, the agritourism component's really important for Connecticut too, because you can do these day trips in any corner of the state, visit a farm, build in, as part of your agenda, and have a really cool experience, and then get back home and sleep in your own bed at night, which is, again, during COVID, really important.
Now, I mentioned multi-generational. Are you seeing young farmers, younger folks coming up and wanting to take over the farms, or young folks wanting to start their own farms? Are you trying to promote that?
We do a lot of promotion in that effort. The average age of a Connecticut farmer is 58, and so they don't always retire at 65 like a lot of other professions, But we pay attention to that because we want to make sure that if they have a generational transfer, it's done as planned, ready, that everybody knows what they're getting into. So we can work with them on that piece. If they don't have a generational transfer, we want to make sure that farm stays active. And so we have a program called Farmland, where if you have land, it's the land match. It's the dating site, if you will. If you want a farm and somebody has land, we have a website that can connect them. We also changed in 2020. We redid some of our grant programs with a focus on new and beginning farmers to make sure that if they were applying, that they would have a kind of a priority bump in the grant application process. And so we did a new and beginning farmer micro grant program. It's up to $5,000. Our normal grants can be up to $50,000. We don't require the same sort of background, 10-year history, long-term lease. The goal was that these farmers are in this very fragile point in their business, and as you think about how do you support Connecticut businesses, it takes 3 years to get a business kind of up and running, and that's also when they're the most critical make or break time. So can we take somebody who's in that period where they've probably exhausted their friends and family network, but they're not quite ready for commercial credit. A bank's not ready to give them that loan. But if they got that one piece of equipment, if they got access to that one parcel of land, that could be a huge difference for them. And so we created this micro grant program, and we invested $30,000 in 6 different farmers this year. And that to me was a great success, kind of from the programmatic side. And this is how we can use our backgrounds in public policy and administration to say, what tools do we have? How can we tweak this? So it's important that we think about, these programs from the large perspective. But as you know, it's also about the individual. And what are we doing for that one person? How can we realize the impact that these large programs and dollars amount, we get lost in millions of dollars, thousands of applications, hundreds of jobs, whatever. So I was at an event not too long ago, and this gentleman came up to me, and he said, "You're the commissioner?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, I can't tell you thank you enough. He goes, "I got one of those new and beginning farmer grants this year." I was like, "Oh, great. How was your experience?" He's like, it's literally changed my life. I went from, kind of scraping it by at one farmer's market to buying this piece of equipment. He goes, it leapfrogged me 5 years of my business plan. He's like, and now I feel like I'm like a real farm. I'm going to multiple farmers markets. I'm going to be able to plant different crops. And so those stories are really important because it makes you realize, it's not another $5,000 grant. It's an individual, it's a business, it's an opportunity, and it was really meaningful for that one individual. And we've always got to keep those people in mind, that person, that individual that we'll try to serve when we're talking about these larger, policy or program decisions, because that's, the bread and butter of why we do these sorts of things. And so I'm hopeful that over the course of the next few years, we'll have, tens of those stories. And we've also launched our diversity, equity, and inclusion working group. We're one of 3 states in the nation to have one of these, because the future of Connecticut agriculture is not going to be looking the same as it has historically. And so we want to make sure that if you're interested in farming in Connecticut, when that could be as a farmer, that could be as an employee of the Department of Agriculture at the state or federal level, it could be working at like Farm Credit East or the Farm Bureau, that we help you through that transition navigation to get situated in there. And so we launched this back in March. We've had about 10 working groups. We've got about 50 people involved. And I think that will be one of those legacies that, we'll plant the seeds, we'll start small, and in, 5-10 years, we're going to see a lot of benefit from those early discussions and efforts.
Exciting. It's great. Now, during this last session, what were some of your legislative successes? So
we actually had what I would argue the best year Department of Agriculture has had in as long as I can remember. All of the bills that we were asked to be introduced were introduced, and all of the bills got passed. That's great. As you know, a lot of bills get introduced. A lot of bills get a public hearing. Some bills get out of committee. Some bills get through one chamber. Very few bills get through both chambers. So the fact that we were able to get all the way through the process. Now, we didn't get everything we asked for in each individual bill, but we got a lot. And for the legislature at the committee level, then at both the Senate and House chamber, to dedicate some time to our bills is really encouraging. That and to be here today talking with you, that policymakers are focused on agriculture and see a benefit of it, and that's helpful for us as we go out into the field and tell people there is a future in agriculture in Connecticut, and look at all these things that are happening. One of the things that we had done every year, every session that I've been commissioner, we've had a hemp bill introduced. We are trying to keep up with, and thanks to the legislature and your efforts, keep up with the USDA requirements. And so as USDA has gotten the program set up, we've had to change our program, make minor tweaks to be in compliance a number of times. So that has always been very helpful, because if we missed one of those steps, you can't really go back. And if you have an unlicensed program, that farmer is going to be without their ability to sell that product. We also worked with in our ag development unit. Eggs were not eligible for the farmers market nutrition program. So the Farmers Market Nutrition Program is a booklet of $3 checks that you can use if you're a WIC family or a senior at farmers markets, and they're basically coupons for your general spending. So we were able to include eggs into that. So in addition to your fruits and vegetables, you can get a protein source. Very affordable, very good protein source. And another reason for people to go to a market. We also increased the value of the booklets. So it was a $15 cap. We made it $21. So more people have more dollars to spend at markets. And it's from a policymaker perspective, I like to point this out. Not only are we supporting food security in those families, but those $21 go right to a Connecticut farmer. So you're supporting a family in their basic needs and supporting that small business that is set up to take their coupons. So it's a great way to take $1 and amplify its investment in the economy.
Excellent. Now we're coming up on a new session. Any specific priorities for you in the?
We're working with OPM in the governor's office to get our legislative package together, and I'm hoping that come in January we'll have an opportunity to present, first to the Rural Caucus, to the Environment Committee leadership, and then knock on wood, hopefully they are as kind to us as they were last year, and we get a chance to talk about all of the bills that we came up with. But I'm excited because there's a lot of, between our DEI working group, our contributions with the Governor's Council on Climate Change, the different challenges that the pandemic has presented, that we're going to have some bills that are able to respond to those particular needs.
Any priority goal for you personally for the agency, for the?
Well, the department over the past almost 30 years now has always been considered to be on the chopping block. Governor Rowland proposed doing away with it. Governor Rell at one point, the legislature at different points. And so the first priority of mine is very basic and foundational, that the state of Connecticut should have a Department of Agriculture. I feel that Governor Lamont has committed to that by naming me. If he didn't think it was important, he would have left the post vacant or done away with it. But the challenges that agriculture has in the farm economy are different than some of our other business communities. As I mentioned a few times now, 5,500 businesses, 370,000 acres. Those aren't things that can be kind of tucked away and receive the same amount of positive attention in a different agency. So I would like to make sure that we are still in existence, fully funded, staffed after my tenure. I want to make sure that we are investing in the food system. So we're not just at the fresh market level, that we're doing processing, and we have some manufacturing going on in the state. Working with the University of Connecticut, the Capital Region Development Authority, Connecticut Ag Experiment Station, all these other public or quasi-public entities to be coordinated in this approach. I also want to make sure that we are doing our best to follow through on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, so that any child, second career, wherever you are in your life, if you look out and you want to be involved in agriculture, there's a home for you there. You know how to get there, and you'll be supported in that process. So a couple different things that I'm hopeful for in the future of the department that I can leave my thumbprint on.
Now, what's your typical day like? Or is there no typical? On
any given day, I could be involved, in a disease issue, for animals. I could be involved with a market access issue for a farm. It's actually pretty rewarding because there's a lot of things that happen in a lot of different areas. So it keeps you on your toe and keeps you sharp. But that's one of the great, things about this agency.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I wanted to thank you for joining us here today and for being a great friend to Simsbury, for your incredible leadership at the Department of Agriculture. And look forward to working with you in the new session and supporting all of your important initiatives, and you're always welcome back to town. And thank you so much. Have a great holiday season.
Thank you. You as well.
And take care and be well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has been another episode of Office Hours with State Representative John Hampton, and we'll see you next time.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.